This is Anne and Chris Lukeman here at Champaign-Urbana Adventures in Time and Space. Let's get right to it.
Hopefully this part isn't too controversial, but we believe that for the industry to succeed, escape rooms need to not only convert first-time players, but must continue to be interesting and exciting for experienced ones. We know not every owner out there has the skill set, budget, or the market to support increasingly huge sets or jaw-dropping special effects with every new experience. But something you can do, something everyone can do, and maybe you haven't considered yet, is to put more thought into adaptive difficulty.
Designing an experience that adapts to what players want, need, or expect from a game is something that almost every escape room already does, and it's something we're pretty passionate about. I'm not even sure we're good at it, but I do know we've tried it in a lot of different ways for a lot of different games. The thing that's amazing about escape rooms is that we have control over this. We're putting on individual immersive theater shows for 4 to 8 people. What other industry can tailor an experience on the fly like we can? Our adaptability is what separates escape rooms from movies, traditional theater, and video games.
Adaptive difficulty is really addressing players' needs more than players' wants. Players generally do a bad job of aligning their wants with their needs. New players, if given the choice, will Leroy Jenkins into the hardest version of the game that they possibly can and get annihilated by it, while seasoned players will actively avoid harder modes or harder games because they've been burned before.
We're going to talk about thoughts, ideas, and strategies for customizing the game to the players. Our hope is to give you one more thing to think about, worry about, and obsess over. By designing experiences that better fit the team that's playing, and by giving game masters agency and tools to adjust the games based on the teams, you can convert more diehard fans to your venue and to the industry. For any enthusiasts out there, we're going to reveal a little bit of how the sausage is made. Sorry, this is your warning.
Different creators have different goals when creating experiences, and I want to respect that. At CU Adventures, our primary objective is fun. It is exceptionally cheesy and stupid to say it out loud like that. I know, but it's true.
Our goal for every experience is that the players have the most fun possible in the game, while minimizing any appearance of outside help or interference. Our secondary goal is to make sure that every single group that plays one of our escape rooms leaves wanting to play another. As David and Lisa have often championed, this is how you build an engaged fan base for the industry as a whole.
So, when we talk about difficulty, I'd love to clear something up. Good team, bad team is a little reductive. There are so many different axes of team dynamics: experience, age, team size, group dynamic, attitude, familiarity with the tropes of a theme, inebriation, native language, height, eyesight, hunger, hanger, and more. Some families will work together, some will argue, some will try to have the kids solve every little thing or be a part of every single interaction because the escape room is for them. Some groups are fast, so fast they miss things early and get tripped up late. Some are smart, but slower paced and will take in all the information one wall at a time, then methodically solve everything at once.
A good team could be hungover or tired from playing 8 other games that day. A normally terrible team could be all warmed up and just really vibing with a game. So really, maybe adaptive gameplay is a better term to use than adaptive difficulty. But we already named this talk, so we're going to move forward as is.
For the enthusiasts and designers out there watching who aren't owners or game masters, we'd just love to shed a little light on how varied an audience an escape room can see.
Champaign-Urbana, Illinois is a college town surrounded by farmland. This may be very similar or very different from your area. But like many venues, our player demographic is all over the place. We'll host nerdy young adults and college students who know what they're getting into, but we also have corporate team building, youth sports teams, family reunions, bachelorette parties, and even nursing home groups. Every weekend, we have at least one of the dreaded tween birthday parties. It's not rare to have a grandparent and 7-year-old wander in because they think we're a children's museum. And now, mostly because of Room Escape Artist and Repod, we have enthusiasts traveling to visit us who've played hundreds, if not thousands of games. We feel like we're making games that are fun and fulfilling for all of these diverse groups of players. But how do you design for them all?
And I'm so glad you've asked. Experiences can be adapted through physical additions or subtractions to a room, technologically driven changes, game mastering, and weird combinations of the three. There are so many different ways to think about these modifications, but there are a few big ways we would like to categorize them. Choices you can make far in advance when designing and building the experience, and choices you and your game masters can make in the moment while the team is playing.
Another vector you can look at is adjusting the game by adding content to the experience versus adjusting the game without adding any additional content.
We're going to work through a bunch of examples, but before we go too deep, a caveat. These are just things we've done or seen and liked, but there is no right answer to this. If you've completely solved for players, leave a comment in the chat, please.
Here are the main examples we're going to talk about today. I am sure there are more that we're missing, but this is what we have the most experience in. Hints as adaptive gameplay, time dilation, bonus puzzles, game master controlled changes, and automated systems.
Before we go too deep into each of them, I think it's important to say none of this matters if your gameplay is bad. You can't polish a turd, y'all. If your players aren't solving a puzzle without a hint, your puzzle is broken. Add more cluing or signposting, or switch it out. Figure out what is wrong. Adaptive gameplay can help cover for a bad puzzle, but it cannot fix the underlying problem. We're going to start out with the easiest way of modulating difficulty, and the one that almost every escape room in the world is doing. Hints. Maybe you've never thought about hints as adaptive difficulty before, but they completely are. They exist as a structure you create to make the experience more or less challenging for groups. Good hints can make it feel like the story's being fleshed out by an NPC character. Bad hints can make it feel like you're dragging the team through the game. Now, we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of what makes hints good or bad. For a really great in-depth presentation on that topic, check out Rita and Summer's awesome talk from Recon 2021. But thinking in terms of adaptive difficulty, hints, and by extension the way your game masters interact with a team, can be a very powerful tool for adapting an experience to work for everybody. We were personally really inspired by the now closed Orlando area company, It's a Trap. We played their game Imprisoned Creatures way back in 2016. Now, this was a pretty easy, adorable, family-friendly fantasy game, but instead of having a TV with a timer and text delivering hints, or a walkie-talkie, or an in-game but out-of-character host, there was a small dragon in a cage in one corner of the room, and this was performed as a hand puppet. The dragon played a character in the game. Our goal as players was to try and free him, but he could also offer hints as suggestions as needed and generally BS with the players. At the end of the game, the dragon left and a human wizard who trapped him came into the room. It was the game master just playing two different roles. This was 2016, mind you. It was our first experience playing a game that used an in-world character to both advance the story and supply hints as needed. And it was the first experience and one of few we've ever played where the game master was multiple characters. If you've been to CU Adventures, you can really see how this influenced us. Every single game we run has an in-world hint system that is played by a game master. Sometimes in audio, we have a haunted doll in our haunted cabin, an animatronic raven in our wizard's tower, and a robot in our sci-fi game. But we also use in-person hinting. Your dungeon master for game night plays a variety of different characters. Most importantly, this in-world character plays an important role in advancing the narrative of the game. They fill in the gaps from that description in the hallway that our game master gives. The character provides hints, but also gives scripted or sometimes improvised information to players at key points. By blurring the line between what is and isn't a hint, we break down that block that players often have against asking for help. This method is especially useful to help clarify quality of life things like a lock sticking or a search fail. And when you use a character that has a reason to be in the space, a diegetic hint system like this avoids pulling players out of the immersion of the game. I said I won't go into too much detail about good hinting, but I lied. Here are a few things I want to say anyway. Good in-character hinting can give players what they need when they need it, without them asking or even knowing they have a hint. But make sure you are never giving away the answer, only leading the players to it. For giving hints, I like to ask questions and word the questions to make sense in character. For example, our creepy doll asking, "Did you see those pretty drawings I left you?" Or a captured animatronic raven saying, "Now I've seen the wizard rummaging around above my cage. Is there anything there? I don't have a good angle on it." But as you're interacting and playing with the characters, don't center yourself in the story. Always remember that the players are the heroes here. Never try and outshine them. Less is more. The pros of hinting as adaptive difficulty are you're probably already doing it. And assuming you're not stuck in a system that requires pre-generated hints, these can be calibrated specifically to how each team is playing in the game. You don't have to change puzzles or puzzle flow to give great hints. And done well, it can elevate the experience and the characters can give players more to care about in the world. The cons for using hinting as your means to adapt difficulty are that it can potentially hurt immersion. Too many helpful nudges make players feel dumb or like they're being led around. And it requires additional game master training to give great hints. Our advice, if you're going to focus hinting as a means to modulate difficulty, is do a good job. Care about what you're saying. Make it in-world and in-story. And make sure that the hints try to be fully customized to what the group is actually doing or talking about. Finally, do not steal the aha moment. They are trying to solve the puzzle. You are just there to help.
This is going to be a pretty short, but potentially feisty topic. Okay, it's fitting that we're now in our sci-fi room because now we're going to talk about time dilation. Einstein's theory of special relativity says that an object in motion experiences time faster than an object at rest. That is, time is relative depending on the observer. An escape room player's experience can be incredibly influenced by their perception of time. If a team is coming up slightly short and would just win with an extra 5 minutes, it's amazing how long a few minutes can feel when you're at the end of an escape room. One of the things that we've done in our games is have a timer that only shows generally how much time is left, usually with pixel lights. Staying in-world with, once again, diegetic timers like a magical hourglass or an energy level readout goes a long way to get people to stop thinking about how many minutes, seconds, or whatever are left. Some of you might be surprised by this, but I am here to tell you, the game is not sacred. For us, the game is a method of getting adults to play and have fun, and the integrity of the puzzles and the time restrictions should be thrown out the window if you can increase player enjoyment. I hereby give you permission to fudge the numbers, to put your finger on the scale, to do whatever's in your power to get the team to have a better time. As Gary Gygax, the father of Dungeons & Dragons, said, a dungeon master only rolls the dice because of the noise they make. Pros. 99% of the time, it's totally harmless and no one notices. The team gets to win and goes home happy. Cons. Sometimes you get the guy who sets his watch timer at the beginning of the game. Ugh. Sometimes folks have dinner reservations or other plans that they're rushing to afterwards. This can be a lot more difficult if you have very tight reset times. Our advice, if you're going to do it, make sure you have a more abstract timer display. Or if you do have a visible timer, you can do my favorite, the Star Trek VHS board game, Time Loop, and just rewind back 5 minutes. If you get caught, fess up. We like to say things like, I was able to delay the authorities by a few minutes, or it looks like the ship's computer was able to reroute power to give you a little extra time. Whatever works to fit inside your theme.
Let's talk about bonus puzzles. Bonus puzzles are a tried and true older method for adapting the difficulty in an escape room. I'm sure many of you have done this or experienced it while playing. At least in this conversation, we think the defining trait of a bonus puzzle is that players are aware it's extra content being added to the base game. We've seen this work two general ways: after the game and during the game. In the first, puzzles added after the game. When you complete the end task of the escape room, if you have a sufficient amount of time left, the game master will introduce a locked box and new clues or information will be revealed. You might use elements in the room, but generally what you're trying to figure out is the new information to open the new compartment. And you're trying to open the box that was given to you. In the second example of this, bonus puzzles during the game, there are additional locked boxes or other challenges to complete that are marked generally with a symbol indicating that the puzzle is optional, and players can choose if they want to solve the bonus content or ignore it and just finish the base game. In our opinion, there are a lot of pitfalls of having the bonus puzzle be available during the game. For one, as we all know, players aren't always the best judge of how good they're doing, especially if the designer has hidden the future secrets of the room really well. And if players are trying to ignore the bonus puzzle track, it can kind of be difficult to sort out what puzzle information is part of the main game, what's part of the bonus track, unless you've labeled everything in the room and we're really trying to move away from that. Or if you've designed a great, perfect, engaging bonus puzzle, it may be more interesting to solve than the base game and then cause a team to have a bad experience. At CU Adventures, many of our older escape rooms have bonus puzzles. But when we use them, we always add them after the game, and we're always really conscious to stop the timer, allow the group to use as much time as they need, and as many hints as they'd like in solving it. Our personal rule of thumb is that game masters could put in a bonus puzzle for a room if a team completes the game with more than 15 minutes left, which is honestly not too often around here. The most important thing to us is players, if they don't get the bonus puzzle, they never know they missed anything. Any content in the game itself that's for a bonus puzzle can be genuinely written off or justified as decor in the room. Here are some pros for using a bonus puzzle to adapt difficulty. If it's introduced after the game, you can evaluate how a team does before judging if they'll need extra content. It can make players feel extra smart or extra special to complete the bonus challenge. If you have someone on the team replaying a game, they'll get to see something new if they kick its butt. Or if something went horribly wrong, if there was a tech fail or a sequence break of some kind, or a random guess that pays off, it can be a way to help save the experience and pad it out so you don't have a 20-minute win or something. And also, it can be a nice little extra on your leaderboard if you keep one. Or for a team that keeps track of games in an ER passport or a spreadsheet. It's a nice little extra bonus gold star. The cons to bonus puzzles are they can be a really weird intrusion that breaks immersion if the game master has to explain, hello, here is a bonus puzzle. Even if this is done in character, it interrupts the flow of the game. You have to design around them very carefully to avoid phantom puzzle tracks and red herrings, where parts of the clues are seen by players playing the game and throws them off. Bonus puzzles can feel disjointed from the rest of the game and can mess up the flow of the narrative. Are you sure you want to have your big climax wrap up in the narrative of the game and then suddenly deliver more game? It's a careful balancing act to do well. And what happens if a team doesn't solve the bonus puzzle? It ends the experience on a bummer when it should be a big win. Our advice about bonus puzzles, if you are going to do them or do them already, never ever put in a bonus puzzle for a team if you're not 100% sure the group will solve it. Don't make your bonus puzzles annoying. This is not the time for a time sink task. This is a time for a nice cherry on the top. And try your best to incorporate the most interesting or exciting elements in the game. You could look for what players have grown to have mastery of, or things that are just fun to do.
We mentioned before that our older games have bonus puzzles. Our newer games generally don't. The reason for that is that we've mostly worked out methods to adapt mid-game gameplay so that the players don't notice. What we're calling Game Master Controlled Adaptive Difficulty is manually adding, removing, or modifying puzzles without letting players know what's happening. When teams book, we ask a few questions to get an idea of what kind of group they'll be. We typically know how many people will be playing, what the age range of those players will be. We also know approximately how many escape room games they've played before. Using this information, we can get a general idea of what a team will look like and can set the game appropriately for the size and skill level. Additionally, when a team walks in, our game masters are trained to get a vibe check to see if our assumptions are true, or if we're wrong, our game masters will further make adjustments. The most important part of a game master's job is reading the group. That is to say, spend a bit of time during the intro and check-in to get a feel for the team that's about to play. For owners out there, empower your game masters to have the freedom to decide when to do these changes. There are so many different ways that you can do this. You can physically add or remove lock boxes, replacing a lock and clues with simple searching for the item that would just normally be inside. If you do this, make sure that you're not leaving any phantom puzzle elements in the game. Design the puzzle to have easily removable clues and signposting that lead to the puzzle's answer. You can also do this by having all the clues on the lockbox itself, although it's harder to justify this in-world for most themes. You can have two different versions of a puzzle that lead to the same answer, using the same information in the room. Or you can have a helper sheet that you usually leave out but put in for groups that might need a little extra help. If you have a task or physical challenge, you can leave it halfway completed for players, or in a way that helps jumpstart how to complete the solve. If you're lucky enough to have a back door into the later rooms of your games, even better. You can sneak in and out puzzle boxes, extra helper sheets, or modify physical tasks on the fly based on seeing how the players are doing in the first part. This is best done by a second game master who isn't currently running the game, of course. For a more high-tech approach, if you have screen-based puzzles, you can use alternate easy or hard versions depending on how your team is doing. Or in some cases, you can skip iterations on a task or even entire puzzles if the team is doing poorly. Before you get out your pitchforks and start typing in all caps to fight me about this, please think of the children. We have a hard rule that kids' birthday parties always win. And once you have that hard rule, it's really easy to justify, why not make more groups happy? Frankly, we've had game masters absolutely play Calvin ball in our games in cases where the team is exceptionally small, all children, has a language barrier, or is otherwise very inexperienced. This is another great reason to have overrides for all your tech puzzles, aside from the very obvious reason of, oops, it's not working for some reason. When you have really awesome game masters who are prepared to think on their feet, genuinely care about the player experience, and are empowered to do whatever it takes to make sure players have a good time, you can ensure 5-star experiences for every group that walks in the door. Pros: allows every group to have the best experience. Doesn't have to require extra tech work. You can do this all with locks and boxes. Adjusting the mid-game difficulty protects your ending. Everyone should put thought into their game's ending, either through story closure, an exciting task, special effects, or something else. Cons: different versions of the same game means the risk of reset problems goes way up. Sometimes you have to awkwardly sneak things in or out of the room in front of players waiting in the lobby. I don't think anybody's ever noticed, it just looks like normal GMs running around, but it does feel weird. Game masters might guess wrong about a group's ability. Our advice, if you're going to do it: have only a few standard things in each game that can be added or removed. Make sure the adaptations are an integral part of training to avoid reset mistakes. If you don't personally game master your own games, make sure that you're regularly checking in with staff so you know what's working and what's not. Of course, if we're talking really high tech, there are ways that you can automate difficulty. This part is going to be incredibly dependent on what you're using for your game control software and how comfortable you feel working with, designing, and troubleshooting technology. Basically, the theory behind automated difficulty systems is that the game software looks at how much time is remaining in the game and then compares that to a baseline or a set of logic that you program, and then adds or subtracts puzzles or tasks. For example, in one of our games, we have an end boss fight where your team solves puzzles or does tasks to literally take down a boss's health bar. This is designed to have a few rounds, so players figure out what to do and then learn to do it really well. Without more spoilery details, it's a great way to keep up a team's energy at the end of the game. We did a tiny bit of automatic difficulty adjustment here, where the amount of damage dealt for each puzzle or task changes based on how much time is left. Just a little bit to make the end game for really fast teams feel a little more substantial and help speed along the victory for teams that have fallen behind. There are a lot of ways this can be implemented. You could design multiple versions of a screen-based puzzle and have the easier or harder one show up based on if players have more or less than 30 minutes left. You can also set a number of iterations for a task to go through. For example, if you have a task that normally has 4 different iterations, you can have the game only require 1 if a player has less than 15 minutes left in the game. You could even program the game to skip screen or tech-based puzzles entirely if players aren't meeting your timed benchmarks. The biggest thing to think about is that if your system is automated, you've really got to trust you've made the right design decisions for every team. I'll usually trust my game masters who are actually seeing what the team is good at, bad at, and enjoys doing, and have them make decisions about the game over pre-programmed logic doing it automatically. But there are a lot of ways this can make a GM's life easier and make the outcomes of games more reliable, if a bit less customized. Pros. The game master doesn't have to worry about it. There's a lower risk of reset errors. It makes it possible to make more decisions faster. You don't want your game master making 30 decisions to adapt gameplay, but a computer can. Once again, it protects your ending and makes sure that players are going to get there. Cons. It does require an advanced level of tech knowledge for implementation and upkeep. The game master has less individual control over the game. No matter how many different parameters you code for, you're still designing for an average team that meets those parameters. Sometimes a group will fall through the cracks and just be a bad fit. Our advice if you're going to do it: lots of playtesting to make sure you're happy with how things are set. Don't be afraid to change the programming if it's not working, even after months of running. A lot of factors can change how a puzzle hits and throw all of your early data off. Make sure to consider edge cases. As we all know, players do a lot of unexpected things.
Fail states. Okay, now I can see how this one might be a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. Start thinking about your win and lose states as adaptive difficulty. You may say that this has nothing to do with adaptive difficulty, but it's just another example of why difficulty is a bad term used to describe the player experience. If a team absolutely doesn't want help, was egregiously late, or otherwise cannot win, having fun, fulfilling, or interesting fail states can make sure a loss still feels like an ending to the story, or generally motivates players to end on a high note. Winning and losing is the original gameplay that adapts to how the players did in the game. Now, thinking about how to handle your worst teams also goes back to Game Master training. Here at CU Adventures, if we think a team is likely going to lose, we train our Game Masters to plan ahead and get them to a specific moment in each of our games before the loss happens. Big reveals, fun interactions, or if they've been toiling away at a particular puzzle, train GMs to have the tools to get them to a solve to that puzzle before ending the game. We like to train so if a team is probably going to lose, 99% of those teams should see the entire game space. Beyond that, we either get players to a particular story beat or make sure they get to the final area with 6 to 7 minutes minimum to explore the new space. It's exciting to get into a new room, and letting players ride that high a bit takes the edge off any potential sour grapes from a loss. Hopefully this doesn't ruin our cred, But Anne and I have failed a few games so hard we didn't even get a chance to see the last room. And that doesn't feel great. Beyond just being annoyed at the room or our performance, it's just vastly unsatisfying to not know how far off we were. It's been a while, but we've also failed games where time runs out and there are clearly a dozen puzzles left. We had no chance. Of the two, having an idea what the rest of the game looks like just felt a lot better. Could be personal preference though, but pay attention to your fail states. At this point, I know what some of you might be thinking. These two have no idea what they're talking about. I'm not going to take their advice. That's fair. There is such a thing as being too flexible with your game design, and there are real costs to making these changes.
Too many different but similar versions of a game can leave room for silly mistakes and reset, weird, complicated ways tech can fail, and more unforeseen challenges.
You don't want an adaptive puzzle flow to leave clues in a game that confuse players with phantom puzzles or red herrings.
You want amazing players who are doing an awesome job to feel amazing, not feel stupid if they barely squeak by or hit a brick wall in momentum because you tried to adapt the game too much or too perfectly. It's a tricky balancing act of challenge, reward, and momentum.
And training. There is a real training cost to making some of these changes. You have to have good game masters, and they have to be able to learn to read groups and situations. This adds both time training to be up to your standards and selectiveness when you're hiring. It means you can't do a single training for all your games. A game master has to really learn the ins and outs of an individual game before they're good at running it and making these decisions.
Despite all of this, including more adaptability in your designs and into your game master's control is worth it. The one point that I would drive home is that players don't always optimize around their own good time. Adaptive difficulty is there to help players get out of their own way so that they can have the best experience for them. In some cases, that might be extending the game. In others, it might be a creative softening. But the better you are at this, the less your players perceive what you're doing.
With more and more players approaching the hobby with increasingly varied levels of experience, the long-term sustainability of this industry can only benefit from thinking about more adaptability.
Think about this part of the player experience and make sure that whatever your games are doing, they're doing it with intention because you've chosen to make design decisions, training decisions, and logistical decisions.
I guess what we want to get across is that there is this whole other field of choices out there that a lot of folks may be not considering. I hope you've enjoyed all of this and that you're able to adapt lessons from this talk to your escape rooms. Thanks.